Wake up, Doyle.
All right. All right, we're on live stream now, so everybody watch your manners. We'll give it another minute or two.
There's a monster following Tom around. Must be that time of year.
It's getting close. See, I knew if I waited another minute, we'd get somebody else. All right, well, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody, to the October meeting. Glad to see everybody here. Hopefully there's more on YouTube because we are streaming it live right now. So if you are, welcome. Feel free to join us anytime. Do we have any birthdays up? Well, my wife's was earlier this month, and I will not tell you how old she was, but she had a birthday because she's in the other room and can hear me, so I won't say anything. Any anniversaries? Okay, wow, quiet month. Okay, so want to just start off. We had a board meeting Saturday. Some of the things we talked about were elections. We do need people to run for office. We have a couple that we have. Oh, well, happy anniversary, Elijah. 11 years. Very nice. Congratulations. We got elections coming up in February. We only have October and November club meetings until then. January is supposed to be the holiday party, so we need to get some people that will volunteer to run for office. Of course, I will not be president next year. So we need somebody to run for president. I think Tom has one more term he can run in any office. Let's see, trying to think of who else. William, is this your first or second term?
This is my first.
Okay, so you can't be reelected one more time. Of course, we do have the new bylaw in the Constitution that if nobody runs for an office and the previous person agrees to continue in that office, they can serve one more term. But to remain a club, we're going to need a president, a vice president, and a secretary and a treasurer. The secretary can also be the treasurer if need be.
I've already said I'd do treasurer again, so.
Okay, so Travis will do treasurer. unless somebody wants to take it away from him. So think about that. I've talked to a couple of people. I know at least one other person that's willing to run for an office. I don't know that we've discussed a particular office, but I'm glad to see that. Some of you new members, if you've been here a year, you can run for an office. We'll be glad to let you have an office so that you can be involved and help the club continue to grow. Over the past 2 years, we've had about a 35 to 38% increase in membership, which is good considering that COVID was there. So it can continue. Just need somebody to do a little work and put in a little time to do it. I just lost my list. Okay. One of the other things we talked about, like I mentioned just a few minutes ago, is the holiday party in January. I need somebody to take the lead on that because I will not be there. I'm not driving back from Mississippi 10 hours for a holiday party. Sorry. But last year before COVID kicked in and they told everybody you had to stay home and couldn't go anywhere, we had talked about and planned on doing a potluck type supper at the fire station. Everybody bring their favorite meal and, the club maybe buy some desserts. And that way you get everybody's best cooking and favorite meals, and you get a lot of really good food, and you're not stuck with just barbecue or just tacos or whatever. You get a good variety of food. So I need somebody to take control of that and spearhead that and get that lined up. And we can reach out to the membership via email if you want, through Ham Club, and if you got some options that you want to present as far as what to do, we can take a vote that way. Through Ham Club and see what everybody wants to do. But I do need somebody to kind of take control of that and see, kind of spearhead that. The other thing is Harry is working on the bylaw change that will allow elections to be done electronically as well as in person. So that would give us the option of doing it via email, via Ham Club online, maybe even Discord, just some way. I think that will be a better way to handle this, because then everybody can vote and not have to, if they dissent with something in public, they may not want to raise their hand, but they can do it via electronic and then be assured that their opinion is counted. The other thing Harry's working on is we're going to change the half-year membership that causes Bob a ton of grief on Ham Club Online. We're going to change that to an online membership, so that people outside of the North Richland Hills area can join for like $10 a year. And be an online member, attend all the meetings, get, any, notifications, whatever going on. The only thing they won't be able to do would be to vote. So that's the plan there. We still need to come up with a proximity to guarantee that you live outside that distance to be an online member, because we want people inside the distance to be full members and come to the club meetings and enjoy the fellowship and educational opportunities. I think that's about all I have tonight. I think Rich is still down in Florida. Has anybody worked him since he's been down there? Guess I'll take that as a no. I know he's been working some things, I think, but I didn't know if anybody had gotten a chance to work him. Coming up also in January is Winter Field Day. And so I'd encourage you, if you've never done a field day or a contest, that's an easy one to get involved in. It's not near as big as field day. That was the first one I ever did, and it hooked me on doing field day and other contests. So that's a good one. If you're new to ham radio or have never done a contest, you just are curious, I would encourage you to get with the club members that are going to do Winter Field Day and participate in that. It's a lot of fun. and it's not near as busy as summer field day. Think if there's anything else coming up. I know there's a VHF contest sometime right after the first of the year. I don't know the date on that one right off the top of my head. But okay. Anybody got anything they want to share with the club tonight or say?
So just in curiosity on that VHF contest, is it regular FM or SSB or?
I think you'll have to look at the rules. I think it's any mode though.
Okay.
So if you got a vertical VHF, just turn it horizontal and point it somewhere and start working. I don't remember. We participated in it last year, and I just don't remember. You know, I've slept since then at least once, so I don't remember that. Anybody else?
When I did it, K5GD did it a year and a half ago. It was FT8 also.
Okay.
NCW.
Okay. Yeah, they have two. They have one early in the year, and I think they have one in November. I think it's the other one. I think it's January and November. I'll have to go look at the schedules and see, but I think that's right. But yeah, they have two VHF a year.
Well, maybe it was 2 years ago then in October, November, sometime like that.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Everybody's just waiting on Tom now, huh, I guess. All right. Well, if nobody else has anything else to say, Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you. Somebody say something? Okay. Tom, if you can hear me, it's all yours.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can everybody see me?
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody can see me okay?
Yes.
All right,
5x5.
5x5. Well, I've got a light out here. It's nighttime. I'm in my backyard driveway and about to give a presentation that I think is going to be very interesting. It's really a show and tell type of presentation. And we'll talk a little bit about theory, but I want to try to use these props that I have, and I'll introduce them to you in a minute. And I select these props because they represent something that takes place in the universe everywhere. And we're going to be talking about specifically how radio waves are formed. So everybody in ham radio knows about an antenna. And I'll also show you my LED antenna here in a minute. And they understand signal to noise ratio, perhaps, standing wave ratios, perhaps. And certainly when you key the microphone on a transmitter, you know that RF is generated and it goes out to some kind of an antenna, whether it be a Yagi 200 feet in the air, whether it be a dipole antenna that's 60 feet on either side, or 3,000 feet on either side if you want real low frequencies, and also magnetic loop antennas or vertical antennas. They all operate in an electrical principle, but they all operate in different electrical principles between them, but they all have one common thing, and that is they radiate electromagnetic waves. And it is those electromagnetic waves that I want to talk about tonight. And hopefully by using my props, I can get the point across as to what's happening. So let me introduce you to my props right now. The first prop you see here is 3 metrodomes. And these metrodomes are going to demonstrate the universal interaction between just about anything, cells, the universal components, electronics, whatever. And it'll be demonstrating how things can synchronize together. And by synchronizing together, you'll also be able to see how electrons are going to be flowing back and forth. And I'll show several presentations on that in addition to the Metrodome. But I think you'll find this Metrodome experiment very, very interesting. So the first thing I'm going to do with the Metrodome is I'm going to start all three of them. And I've got the prop set up so that I am blocking any movement. And I think you guys, if you look in a little closer, you'll see that I've got a board across here and I've got 2 Coke cans. And this is the key to understanding how this effect is going to take place. Right now, I have placed a weight on one side of the Coke can and another weight on this side of the Coke, on this Coke can. And now when I start these Metrodomes, you're going to see that they're going to just mess around and go back and forth. And then I'm going to take the 2 stops that are preventing, that are touching the cans. I'm going to take them away, and then you're going to see something else take place that you, I'll explain a little bit more when you see it, that you will see in nature. But a lot of people don't recognize it. All right, so here I go. So, and you all see that. Don't yell at once.
Yeah, we can see it, Tom.
Is there a way to make Tom's screen the default without it going to other people?
Yeah, I just selected it and it's staying as the default.
Yeah, up on the top right, there's a view and you can say speaker. That's one way. Instead of gallery.
Yeah, I did that, but now it's like you're now the.
Yeah, then just double click on the gallery up at the top on whoever you want to be, like Tom's.
Okay. Did Tom go away?
He's out of the picture.
Okay, well, I just haven't heard him in a while, so.
Can you guys hear me?
Oh, now we can.
Yes.
Yeah. Some reason my my audio went muted. I didn't touch it, but anyways. Okay, so what you're seeing now is these oscillations. If you listen to the sound, there's a little bit of a time when they all try to synchronize, but they don't stay that way. See? Now they're going back out of sync. If you look at these 2 here, they're trying to get in sync. That one over there isn't. pretty soon these are going to go out of sync. Right now, these are in perfect sync. But then you can hear them, they're beginning to go slightly out of sync again. And there they go. You notice, you just, in this method that I've got right now, with them sitting on a flat board, they're never going to stay in sync. They will at some point all sync up, but very briefly. And that's over time, of course. We're plotting time here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewind them, and I'm going to release the stops on the that I have on the Coke bottles, and then I'll explain afterwards. When you see the effect, I'll explain how it happens. Bear with me. Got to make sure they're wound up. Okay. Let's start them up again. Okay, now I'm taking off the stops on both sides. Now, what will happen now after a period of time? You notice the two right ones here, they look like they're in sync, and this one's out of sync in a way because it's going in the opposite direction. The effect that you're looking for is when all three of the weights are moving in the same direction, to the left and to the right. Okay. It takes a couple of minutes for them to get themselves in sync. And remember this, they are independent weights. Okay, and each one has its own time interval. So that's very important to understand. Each one has their own time interval. So the question is, how can they get in sync so that they all occur and work at the same time? We'll see this happen now pretty quick. It's an interesting phenomenon. It's kind of mysterious if you see it for the first time. Now, in this mode, we can talk about how electrons behave in matter. Like, for example, in copper or silver, what we use for antenna wire, or aluminum. The electrons that are on the surface of that material are kind of free. They kind of bounce around, but they do it all randomly, much like these pendulums are doing. Now, there's two, but they're still not in sync yet. You hear the sounds? The sounds are in sync, but the weights aren't in sync. Eventually, when these get into sync, it will be a representation of the electrons suddenly getting excited in a copper wire, silver or aluminum, when you transmit an RF signal to the antenna. The electrons start moving in one direction and then reverse and go in the opposite direction, because we're feeding it an oscillating signal that goes positive and negative. And these will eventually represent that. But in nature, This method here is also seen in fireflies. If anyone gets on the web and starts searching about fireflies in synchronization, you'll find that the fireflies light up randomly. There may be thousands of them in a tree, but eventually they all synchronize together and their light comes on simultaneously. Yet each one of them are separate and they all have their own separate time. Now the two right ones are beginning to synchronize. Let's see if the left far one can get into sync. I wish it would be a lot shorter. When I demonstrated it to Jeff, it came on right away. I think they're going to come in. There we go. There they are. All three of them. Now let's see how long it stays. Remember, my method was they should go out of sync, like I showed you before. Are you guys seeing this? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yep, they're on sync and you said they're gonna get out of sync?
No, they will not go out of sync.
That's interesting.
Notice? They've been in sync now for almost a minute. Whereas when I had my stops on the Coke bottles, they went out of sync right away. Notice that. There they are. They're in sync. All right. I'll stop them and I'll explain what's going on. Well, maybe before I stop it, let me point to these Coke bottles. If you can zoom in, you'll see the Coke bottles are moving back and forth. See that? You guys see that?
Yeah, you can see them moving.
Yeah, that's the key to this whole thing. This represents you walking, a bunch of people walking down a bridge and taking the same step, left, right, left, right. Eventually, when everybody does that, or enough people do it, walking across a bridge that isn't set up correctly, the bridge will start to sway because you are getting to the frequency of the bridge itself. And right now, with these three pendulums at the setting that I gave it, I am synchronizing through the board and the movement of the Coke bottles representing the movement of you walking over the bridge, for example. And these will always stay in sync because a bottle, when one of them goes to the left, the bottle goes a little bit to the left. When they go to the right, the bottle goes a little bit to the right. And that same movement, that back and forth, got them into sync. Actually, the movement of the weights moved the Coke bottle, which further reinforced their getting into sync. And that happens in nature. If you look at fireflies, like I said, and watch them, and they have videos about this too on YouTube, you'll see them all randomly lighting up. And then pretty soon, they're going to all be lighting up together. And yet they're all independent and they all have their own little time clock. See? And how do they do that? How does that happen? Well, that's what you call synchronicity. And it happens all over in nature and in the universe, in the subatomic level, everywhere. So right now, if you can imagine, we have a RF carrier going to an antenna. It could be a Yagi, it could be a dipole, it could be a magnet, whatever type of, it could be a vertical. And the wave that you're sending it is alternating current, voltage with alternating current. And they go left, right. If the electrons will move from one end to the other, or up and down. And I'll explain that in a minute with the electrons. But this kind of represents how they work. And I'll show you another demonstration of electrons as well. Anyways, I'm going to stop that and move on to the next. So the Coke bottles and the board. They move back and forth. You can barely see it, but they in turn cause the Coke bottles to move. And eventually, even though they're separate, they get into sync. All right, let me pull these aside. For my next presentation, see if I can get see if I can see those marbles here. Can you see them? Let's see. No, I'll come up a little bit closer here. I will tilt this. Okay. Does everybody see these marbles?
Yep.
Okay. In a copper wire, aluminum, anything that is a good conductor, when no electricity or any voltage or current is applied to the material, the electrons are just kind of floating around in random order because this is an electron, okay? These are electrons. I'm just using marbles. Electrons don't look like this. I'll explain that in a little bit. But nevertheless, they're moving at random and electrons are negatively charged. That means they repel each other. So you get in a bunch together like this, and they try to wiggle out of they try to wiggle out of their location, and eventually they just kind of randomly stay in the wire. The deeper the wire, the more compressed they are. At the surface of the wire, very close to the surface, they can move freer because their atoms are not bound, and so the electron can escape easier. So that's what they do. Eventually, if you had, for example, an insulator is not a good conductor of electricity because all of the electrons and the atoms and the electrons are so tightly bound together that they can't move about. And even though they have negative charges, they're just so tightly grouped together because of the material and the way the atoms are constructed, like Teflon and some of the others. They are tightly bound. And so when you try to pass an electric current through it, it won't happen. It can't get through to excite the atoms and kick one of the electrons out of its orbit. It can't do it. So no electricity flows through a insulator, like the insulator on a wire. They put plastic or whatever on here. So that's what this is about, is to demonstrate to you that electrons otherwise in a good conductor are free to roam about on the surface. The deeper it goes into a copper wire, the more difficult it is for the electrons to move because they get tighter packed. Okay? And you've often, maybe in one of the other presentations, I told you about a magnetic loop antenna using tubing. The tubing is only about 1/8 of an inch thick. And the reason for that is so that the electrons can move more freely. If you had a solid piece of tubing, it wouldn't make any sense because the inside core of it isn't going to be able to develop an RF current. So we use tubing for magnetic loop, and a lot of the antennas you have, verticals are tubing, Yagi antennas are tubing, and there's a good reason for it because electrons that are on the surface of them are freer to move about, and they can be excited much easier. So let's take another look at my next prop. Can you all see this? See if I can make sure
Yeah,
you
it's
see.
in screen.
It's on the screen? Okay. Let me move the marble away from here so I got my room.
Yeah, don't lose any of those marbles, Tom.
Okay. I built here a simple electromagnetic wave. Pretty familiar with most of you who look at radio waves. So you have the peak where the voltage is highest and at the lowest point and so forth. So the distance from the peak of this wave and the peak of this wave is a wavelength. But if I had a bunch of these made up and I was passing by a spot, like right here, like that, it's how many of these that will pass this timestamp, if you will, in a second. Okay? That's the frequency. So this bottom part is that in a electromagnetic wave, you have the electronic you have the electron part that produces electrons, and then you have the part that produces the magnetic wave. When these voltages are high, this induces a magnetic portion of the wave. So all radio waves or waves have an electromagnetic component. And the reason why that is so is that when electrons start to move in a conductor or move in free space, when they move in a conductor, movement of the electron produces a magnetic component. And so you have the electrons in motion here with increase and decrease of voltage, and you have the magnetic component that it produces. That is in phase, is considered in phase because they are both at the high end. See, if they were out of phase, I would have to move this one over into here. So this represents an electromagnetic wave with both components. Now I'm going to show you how these electromagnetic waves work inside, let's say, a dipole antenna is my example. I'm going to take you over to another little presentation that I have here. I'm going to have to move the camera. Okay, let's see. Now, can you see this? Can you see that light moving? Can you guys see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. All right. I'm going to make it move back and forth. And by the way, I use my little Icon 705 here for a prompt. So it's the one that producing the electromagnetic wave. It's the one that's producing it. Or I'll just get it a little bit better there. So you can still see it. Okay, now I'm going to reverse it. It's so dark out here. I got to turn on my thing on the phone. All right. See, they're reversing now. These are electrons within a wire or a tubing. So the white ones can be the electrons. And when they get to the end, they move back. So in an alternating current that your transceiver generates, it's alternating back and forth. Okay. So imagine these electrons, they're in motion. Okay. The reason why electrons get in motion is because there is a different potential. For example, in a battery, you have the plus side and the minus side. But maybe what you didn't know about the battery is that the plus side is made with material that has a deficiency of electrons. And the negative side of the battery has a material that has an excess amount of electrons. So the amount of material on both sides in a like 1.5 volt battery or a car battery could have a very large area on one side that has a deficiency of electrons, but has a large area with lots of space for electrons to move into, and the negative side has a huge amount of electrons. But if the battery is not connected, nothing happens. But the minute you connect the battery to something, hopefully you don't short it out, suddenly the excess amount of electrons in the negative side rush to fill in the gaps on the atoms of the other side. And that's where you get a voltage potential, is the amount of material that is used to create a deficiency of electrons on one side and a whole bunch of electrons on the other. And that deficiency will create a potential. And so when you close the circuit to light a light or something, suddenly the negative side starts rushing its electrons to the positive side. Now, the number of electrons that pass a given point on that wire is the current. That's how you measure 1 ampere. And they measure it in coulombs, but nevertheless, we understand it as 5 amps, 1 amp, a half an amp, whatever. However many electrons can pass that given point at a specific time represents the current flow. And in the case of explaining current by using water, it's good to do because you can see the flow of water. You can actually see the result of many, many molecules and atoms flown by. And certainly the higher the pressure at your garden hose, the faster the flow is. But what a lot of people don't understand is that pressure is not analogous to the electronic realm. The electronic realm, again, is not a pressure differential like it is in water, because the pressure differential is a result of gravity, where you have something, a bunch of water sitting on a tower, for example, and that water is fed down a bunch of tubes to your house. The weight of that water, gravity pulling it down, is what causes the pressure differential. But in the case of electrons, that's not the case. In this case, we have a bunch of electrons. I'll just repeat myself again, a bunch of electrons on one side, and we have a deficiency of electrons on the other. And when you close the circuit, the excess amount of electrons will flow to the negative, to the other side that doesn't have a lot of electrons. And of course, if you keep the battery turned on, lighting a light bulb long enough, pretty soon what's going to happen is the positive terminal will gain enough electrons to where there won't be any current pass. There will be equilibrium in the battery. But in the case of alternating current, you have an oscillator that moves the electrons in the wires back and forth, negative and positive. And these electrons do what you see here. They move in the wire back and forth. And if you have a wire at a certain length on each side, and you have the electrons moving at a speed that matches the length of the wire on both sides, you would have something like a wavelength or a half wavelength developed. And that would be the maximum point in which radiation would take place. And now, let me just repeat that. When electrons move in a wire, like we're seeing here, radiation will take place. Electromagnetic radiation will take place. And the question then becomes, how does that happen? And the answer is the electrons moving by themselves in the wire actually create an electrical field, which then produces the magnetic field. And that field is a field that propagates out into the atmosphere and outer space if needed. So that field is generated by the movement of the electrons. And interestingly enough, when the electrons are moving, like we're seeing here, and they generate that electromagnetic field that produces waves, it turns out that light is also a wave. In fact, the wave properties of most things that generate a wave, whether it be by electrons or by some other means, a positron or some other method, but we'll stick with electrons. If you know down in the, let's say in the AM frequency, you're down around 560 kilohertz. But then you move on up and you go up into 40 meters, that's 7 megahertz, and you're moving ahead. Pretty soon, you're going to get into a wavelength where light exists. And when light exists, it's also going to show us what it looks like, red, green, blue, and all the colors in between. And if you keep on moving, the frequency of the wave will increase, and pretty soon you won't see it anymore. And you're going to get into the top end, where, microwaves, X-rays, you'll get infrared, X-rays, and then ultimately gamma rays, the most energetic of all. And they are lethal if you're close by, because the higher the frequency, the more energy is being dissipated. But it's interesting to note that everything that you're experiencing is done with photons, just like it is in light. So when you look out into the universe and we see things in the various spectrums, radio waves, light, they're all photons traveling at the speed of light. Inside a conductor, the electrons can't travel at the speed of light because there's too much material they're bouncing around with. So what I kind of want to leave you with here is that radiation from an antenna becomes photons, and they travel outward at the speed of light in waves. Now, according to quantum field theory, it's been sort of proven that waves are actually little tiny particles, quanta, they call them. And if you look at a photon, it can act like a wave or it can act like a particle. It's got a dual nature to it. But literally, that's how radio waves get propagated into space, is through these tiny photons that have an energy determined by whatever the transmitter is transmitting. And the reverse is true when you receive something. The photons, the radio frequency waves strike your wire, and they excite the surface electrons of the wire, and they travel back and forth depending upon the frequency of the incoming wave, and your receiver detects it, and you hear the sound or watch the video. So everything in the end turns out to be a duality in the quantum field, where it's either a particle or it's a wave. And there are experiments that prove both. And I invite you to look on YouTube. There's so much great material about electromagnetic waves, quantum mechanics, quantum field theory, that all dovetails into our hobby and what's in the very background of what we do. So looking back on the metrodomes, you see a synchronicity where electrons are going to be moving back and forth based on a force. We saw them synchronize, though it seemed impossible that they could do that because they're both independent. I've shown you what a electromagnetic wave looks like. It has a magnetic component and it has electrical component. And I've shown you this dipole antenna where the electrons are moving back and forth, and those movements produce the electromagnetic wave, which becomes photons, and they go out into the world about us so we can talk to each other. And with that, I'll close my presentation.
Thanks, Tom. Anybody? It's great presentation. That was very interesting about the metronomes, even though I saw it before the club meeting. It was very interesting to watch them do it again and how that works. Does anybody have any questions for Tom?
I thought it was a good presentation.
Yes, I agree.
Lots of very good, useful information there for sure.
It's different, that's for sure.
Neighbors probably think Tom's got a discotheque in his driveway now with all those lights going on.
Yeah, that's for sure.
All right,
Put them out in the front yard for Halloween.
there you go. Let the kids go to grab it and then key up the radio.
Only one time.
Yep. Won't have any kids coming back for Halloween candy. Get to keep it all yourself. All right.
Not a problem with that, is there?
Hey, go for it.
Oh, hey, Elijah, I got your JPEG and I turned it into Microsoft. And according to the latest report I got, is they accepted us as a nonprofit. And now I got to go in and see what that means.
You meant Travis, right?
I mean, Travis. Yeah.
Okay, I
Sorry.
just wanted to make sure that.
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to make sure too.
Way to go, Tom, and thanks for all that help, Travis, finding the paperwork.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm curious to see what that's going to get us as a club. That's for sure.
Yeah, it may be nothing, but then why not? I mean, I just felt like I had to try.
Exactly. All they can do is say, you don't get anything off. Okay, well, we won't be
Yeah.
buying your stuff.
Well,
You-
we get something off. We just don't know how much.
Well, you started something and presented it to them.
That's
That's
right.
right. That's right.
Very nice. Any other questions or comments or thoughts or?
No, I thought it was
Anything?
really good, so thank you.
Yeah, I thought it was very, very interesting. John's up
Welcome.
there clapping. I would clap, but I don't have my camera on, so you couldn't see anyway. So,
Well, thanks, guys. You're welcome. I really, if you play it back now, yeah, watch it again on YouTube, you might get more out of it.
yeah, and Tom, if you'll get me those links that you wanted to share, I can go into the YouTube channel and add those to the description of this
Okay.
video.
Is it okay if I do that tomorrow? I just
Sure.
don't have time tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even have to be tomorrow if you're busy. Just whenever you get them. to
Yeah,
me, I
I'll
can
get
go
them.
in and-
Oh, I'll
and
get them
edit
to
it.
you tomorrow. I'll get them to
Okay.
you tomorrow.
Okay, that'll work. But anything else? God, it's going to be our shortest club meeting ever, I think. All right, well, does anybody want to make a motion that we adjourn?
I motion it.
Second?
Second.
All
All in
right,
favor?
all in favor? Honk your nose or something.
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
All right, guys, thanks for coming tonight, and we'll see you next month or on the air in between if I never get an antenna up.
All right.
All
Thanks,
righty.
guys.
Have a good one.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank
73.
you. Thanks, Tom.